Splinter Cell was released in 2002 on Xbox and PC, but when it was released for the PS2 and GameCube, a different version of the game had to be made. Which version did you play? Let me know down in the comments. In this series, I go through all the differences between the two versions level by level. Police Station is the second level of the game and the focus of today's video. It's the first real mission of the game and has Sam tracking down the bodies of missing CIA agents and infiltrating a corrupt police station. If you like this video, then please hit that like button. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, and let's get started. Here is every difference in the level Police Station. The differences once again start before the mission even begins with the opening cutscene. In the PS2 version of the game, Sam arrives at the airfield to get on the powered-in aircraft, whereas on the Xbox version, they already have him in Turkish airspace. In the PS2 version, Sam spots Junior Wick smoking a cigarette and proceeds to tell him, "Don't like that." Whereas in the Xbox version, Wicks can be seen with a cigarette in his mouth, and Sam says the exact same line to him. "Don't like that." Also, one day I hope to find someone who looks at me the same way Junior Wicks looks at Sam. The PS2 version also introduces Anna Grimsdottir here, reusing dialogue from the training mission in the Xbox version of Training. The rest of the cutscene plays out quite similar except for a few changes to the story. In the PS2 version, agents Ballstein and Madison went into Georgia and were caught together after uncovering an army like in Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace, all of this being presented in the game's opening cutscene. Whereas in the Xbox version, Lambert states that Madison was a mole in the Georgian cabinet, and Blaustein went in after her once they lost contact. It's a minor change to the story. I'm guessing it was done for the flashy opening cutscene to add more action and suspense to the opening cutscene and be less like a political drama. A lot of the dialogue is the same here, it's just cut up a bit differently, and both cutscenes end with Sam picking up his pistol and getting ready for the mission. The date of the mission is the same in both versions. Another fun thing I noticed is that in the Xbox version, when Sam is talking to Lambert, Grimsdottir is missing from behind Sam on the screen, and whenever it cuts back to Sam, she's right there behind him again. I don't know why I brought that up, I just thought it was quite interesting and funny. To get to the level itself, you can instantly see the difference between the two versions. The Xbox version has much better lighting and looks a lot bigger, and the space seems a lot better. Both have a civilian walking across the balcony above, but the Xbox version has an extra civilian walking along the bottom who goes to meet another civilian in the alleyway for a nice little chinwag, whereas the PS2 version just has a wall in that area. Once you make your way to the next section though, through a tunnel, you come to a burning building. The Xbox version has more rooms on fire and 3 culprits leaving the scene of the crime via a van, whereas the PS2 version has 1 floor on fire and only 1 person making their way to the van. Again, probably down to memory space, but there's a lot more detail in the Xbox version, such as textures and objects throughout the level. Once you zipline into the building, the door is placed in different positions on each version, the PlayStation 2 version being on the left and the Xbox version being on the right. This is because there's a whole room missing in the PlayStation 2 version, and some dialogue where Grimsdottir is supposed to be leading Sam through the building and the roof collapses. There's also more doors in the PlayStation 2 version for some reason. Maybe the developers thought there wasn't enough in the original. There's not much difference in the layout of the next section, minus the extra doors and a few fire effects. As you make your way to the contact, who's been crushed. In the Xbox version, he's been crushed by wooden beams from the ceiling which are on fire, and in the PlayStation 2 version, he's been crushed by a falling vent. The exit door is also for some reason on a different space at the back. They both lead to the same looking area, but for some reason the PlayStation 2 version is further to the right. The skylight room is exactly the same in both versions, as is their placement on the level, so it is quite the interesting decision to move that door. In the second section of the game, there's quite a lot of changes. Firstly, there's a lot of civilians in the Xbox version that can catch Sam and put the guards on high alert, which adds a lot more suspense to this section. The first ones being on the streets below as you walk along the walkway towards the objective, meaning that you still have to stick to the shadows. These two are missing from the PlayStation 2 version. Also, the way you get across to the other side is much different, the Xbox version requiring a jump and the PS2 version providing you with a pipe to shimmy across. I actually prefer the PS2 version as the jump itself is quite finicky and doesn't feel all that natural to do. I often missed it when I was rushing through the level to get some extra footage. Next we move on to the safe house, where the dialogue and enemy numbers remain the same, but the house itself is completely different. For starters, there's a nice window for you to climb through on the Xbox version that makes it easier to infiltrate unnoticed, whereas in the PlayStation 2 version you have to wait for the guards to finish their conversation before you can enter. Also, the room is much bigger in the Xbox version, with the TV being on the right of the room and the computer on the left. This is flipped on the PlayStation 2 version. There's also extra rooms like the kitchen and bathroom in the Xbox version, with the bathroom containing a medkit on the wall, and the PlayStation 2 version just being one long corridor and having a medkit on the floor. The objective is in the same place. You slide the painting and get the door code from the computer, then make your way out the back door. But once you get out the door, you're greeted by two very different looking areas, the Xbox version having beautiful balconies and foliage, and also the place where you zip is very different too. With the Xbox version having streets down below with civilians that can see you wandering around, and the PlayStation 2 version being barren and empty. Once you make your way down to the streets, you're met with another difference. In the Xbox version, there's a civilian walking in the balcony above the street, and whilst the balcony is in the PlayStation 2 version, it doesn't protrude into the street, and there's no civilian on top. The two guards that question the drunk guy remain the same, and so does their dialogue, showing you just how corrupt the police here are. However, if you kill the civilian in the Xbox version, you just get a slap on the wrist from Lambert.
Damn. You know you just gunned down a civilian, right? One more mistake like that and this mission's finished.
But if you kill him in the PlayStation 2 version, then it's game over.
Damn it, Fisher. We can't keep delivering up these civilian corpses. Maybe you weren't the agent we were looking for. You and this mission are finished.
I think this is due to him being one of the only civilians in the level, whereas in the Xbox version you can get away with one civilian death, but two is just too much for Lambert. They also blocks off the place I normally wall jump from in the Xbox version, meaning in the PlayStation 2 version I have to jump at the staircase, which if I'm not careful has me accidentally climbing up, automatically exposing myself to the officers. In the Xbox version, after making your way past the two officers, you have to head up a long alleyway past an enemy, all whilst avoiding a civilian looking on in a window and the one in the balcony from before. You go up a staircase and to a lovely courtyard. In the PlayStation 2 version, there's no enemies or civilians, and you just wander happily to the end of a much narrower corridor and up the stairs to the courtyard with zero consequences. The same goes for the courtyard itself. In the Xbox version, it has a brightly lit courtyard with a civilian in a window looking on and moving from window to window, meaning you have to time your movements or risk him calling an alarm. In the PlayStation 2 version though, you can just roll through into the bush and use the computer without a care in the world. The rest of this section is similar, but the PlayStation 2 version is much narrower and much more compact, with no civilians lurking in the back streets or windows. This really makes this part of the level much more boring in the PlayStation 2 version, and a whole lot more interesting and suspenseful in the Xbox version, as you have to really be careful and look around a lot and see who's watching. The end of this section is the same in both versions. You jump over the wall and into the police station. Final section of the mission, the opening courtyard remains relatively the same in both versions, although the door to the police station itself is missing a keypad on the PlayStation 2 version. Inside the jail cell area, you'll find extra inmates in the Xbox version. We have this guy in the first cell on the right, who has a bit of dialogue, and you can take him out with your pistol. This guy in the middle cell on the left, who looks dead, and another guy asleep in the third cell on the right, who also may be dead, as I tried shooting him a bunch of times and got no reaction. Past the prison, and you'll notice a window is missing in the PlayStation 2 version, and a much smaller room that the guard enters. There's also another room further down with a guard watching TV in it. In the Xbox version, this door needs to be lockpicked and the guard stays there, whereas in the PlayStation 2 version, the door is unlocked and the guard goes on a patrol, which led to this awkward moment where he tried to open the door, but I was already looking underneath with my optic cable trying to capture the footage. The next differences are in the morgue. The room with the mortician has two computers in the Xbox version and one in the PlayStation 2 version, and the camera placement is different in both versions. The Xbox version is on the left and the PlayStation 2 version is on the right. Once we go up the stairs to the reception area, we have one of the most frustrating changes so far. In the PlayStation 2 version, the whole reception area is shrunk down to the point it makes sneaking around very difficult. I usually sneak around the outside whilst the guard and the civilian are having a conversation, but I found it so much more difficult and frustrating in the tiny reception area in the PlayStation 2 version. The layout is mostly the same, it's just smaller. After we sneak through reception or blast our way through on the PlayStation 2 version, we go upstairs to a little office area, which again is smaller on the PlayStation 2 version. The Xbox version has 3 rows of desks, more computers to hack, and 2 extra rooms that add to the atmosphere of the game. The extra rooms are interrogation rooms, one being the interrogation room itself and the other being the observation room. Inside the interrogation room is a dead body, once again showing the player how corrupt this police station actually is. It's a very nice touch. Oh, and for some reason the Xbox version has a light switch and the PS2 version doesn't have any lights in that room. And the final difference in this level is the way you exit the game. In the Xbox version, you open the door and walk out to the van after completing the mission. In the PlayStation 2 version, when you open the door, a cutscene plays. Not much of a difference, but I guess they were saving as much memory as possible when making this version. So that is every difference in the level police station from Splinter Cell. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything this time. I wasn't really expecting there to be so many differences between these 2 versions. I've never really noticed it while playing as a teenager. But a lot of the cut content in this mission is a real detriment to the game itself. The civilians in the streets and the extra enemies make that section so much more satisfying to stealth around, and the narrower streets and corridors make it much more difficult to get past people undetected. I found myself knocking more people out in the PS2 version out of necessity rather than my own mistakes, which takes away from the Splinter Cell stealth aspect of the game a lot more. If you've liked this video, then please hit that like button. If you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. Join me next time as I go through all the differences in the next level, Defense Ministry.